I never thought a company picnic would be the stage for my revenge. But sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor. The smell of barbecue smoke couldn't mask the stench of corruption that had been rotting Meridian Financial from the inside out. And I was about to serve justice on a silver platter. My name is Amanda Parker. And 3 months ago, I was just another ambitious marketing director climbing the corporate ladder at Meridian Financial. Today, I'm the woman who brought down one of the most powerful CEOs in the industry. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started with a simple mistake. Well, what appeared to be a mistake at first. I was working late on a Friday evening, trying to finalize the quarterly marketing budget report, when I accidentally accessed the wrong shared drive folder. Instead of finding the marketing expenditure files, I stumbled upon a folder labeled Executive Compensation, Confidential. My cursor hovered over the back button for exactly 3 seconds before curiosity got the better of me. What I found inside that folder would change everything. Spreadsheets detailing massive bonus payments that had never been reported to the board, wire transfer records to offshore accounts, email chains discussing the manipulation of company stock prices. And at the center of it all was our beloved CEO, Marcus Thornfield, the man who preached integrity and transparency at every company meeting. The evidence was overwhelming. Thornfield had been systematically embezzling funds from the company's pension fund, using the money to finance his lavish lifestyle, while employees like my colleague Jenny struggled to make ends meet after the company had temporarily frozen pension contributions. The hypocrisy made my blood boil. I spent the next 2 weeks carefully documenting everything, taking screenshots, and organizing the evidence into a comprehensive file. I knew I had to be smart about this. Thornfield wasn't just any executive, he was connected, powerful, and ruthless. Going through normal channels would likely result in the evidence disappearing and me getting fired, or worse. That's when I remembered the annual company picnic. Every year, Meridian Financial hosted a massive outdoor event for all employees and their families. It was Thornfield's favorite day of the year, where he could play the role of the benevolent leader, shaking hands with workers and posing for photos with their children. The local news station always covered it, and this year, they were planning a special segment on corporate leaders who give back, featuring Thornfield himself. Perfect. I began planning my revenge meticulously. The picnic was scheduled for the first Saturday in June, exactly 1 month away. I needed to coordinate timing, technology, and most importantly, make sure the evidence reached the right people at the right moment. I couldn't just leak the information. I needed to create a moment that would be impossible to cover up or spin. The first part of my plan involved recruiting allies. Though they didn't know they were part of anything, I started with Tom Bradley, our IT director, who had always been frustrated with the company's outdated technology budget. During a casual conversation about the picnic's audiovisual setup, I mentioned how impressive it would be if we could do a live broadcast to our satellite offices around the country. Tom's eyes lit up at the challenge. You know what, Amanda? That's actually a great idea. We could set up a proper streaming system, maybe even record Thornfield's speech for the company website. I've been wanting to test out some new equipment anyway. I smiled, knowing that Tom's enthusiasm for technology would be the perfect cover for what I really needed: access to the company's entire digital infrastructure during the picnic. Next, I approached Lisa Chen, our head of public relations, about inviting more media coverage to the event. Lisa was ambitious and saw the picnic as an opportunity to raise her profile within the company. She was thrilled when I suggested we invite not just the local news, but also business journalists from the regional newspaper and even a few industry bloggers. This could be huge for our corporate image, Lisa said, practically bouncing in her chair. I'll reach out to my contacts at Channel 7 and the Business Tribune. Maybe we can even get someone from the Wall Street Journal Regional Bureau. Everything was falling into place. I had the technology infrastructure, the media presence, and now I needed the perfect moment to deliver the evidence. That's when I came up with the most audacious part of my plan. I would hide the revelation in plain sight. During Thornfield's own speech, I volunteered to help write Thornfield's address to the employees, something I had never done before. But I framed it as a marketing initiative, suggesting we incorporate more specific financial achievements to demonstrate the company's stability and growth. Thornfield's assistant, Patricia, was overwhelmed with picnic logistics and gratefully accepted my help. The speech I crafted was a masterpiece of double meaning. On the surface, it was a typical CEO address about company values, employee appreciation, and future growth. But embedded within it were specific references to financial figures that would become devastating once the real numbers were revealed. I made sure Thornfield would talk about transparency in all our financial dealings and the trust our employees place in leadership to manage their future security. As the picnic date approached, I felt like I was living a double life. During the day, I was the enthusiastic marketing director helping to organize the event. I coordinated with catering, approved the entertainment lineup, and even helped design the banner that would hang behind Thornfield's speaking podium. At night, I was a woman obsessed, fine-tuning every detail of what would become the most spectacular corporate downfall in the city's history. The night before the picnic, I barely slept. I'd created a sophisticated digital presentation that would automatically trigger during the live broadcast. It was designed to look like a technical glitch at first, the kind of thing that might happen during a live stream. But instead of the usual technical difficulties message, viewers would see a carefully curated slideshow of Thornfield's financial crimes, complete with bank statements, email evidence, and a timeline of his embezzlement. I had also prepared physical copies of the evidence, sealed in manila envelopes, ready to be distributed to the journalists and board members who would be attending. The beauty of the plan was its redundancy. Even if one part failed, the others would ensure the truth came out. Saturday morning dawned clear and warm. Perfect weather for what Thornfield would later call the worst day of my life. I arrived at Riverside Park early, ostensibly to help with setup, but really to make final preparations. The stage was positioned perfectly, with a clear view of the river and the city skyline in the background. It would make for beautiful footage, the kind that news stations love to use in their reports. Tom had outdone himself with the technical setup, multiple cameras, professional lighting, and a streaming system that would broadcast to our satellite offices and, thanks to my suggestion, also to a backup server that I had convinced him was necessary for redundancy. What Tom didn't know was that this backup server was actually my own system, which would allow me to control exactly what appeared on screen during the broadcast. As employees and their families began arriving, I felt a mixture of excitement and terror. There was no turning back now. I watched Thornfield work the crowd, his practiced smile never wavering as he posed for photos and shook hands with workers whose pension money he had stolen. The sight of him laughing with Jenny's 8-year-old daughter while knowing what he had done to her family's future made my resolve even stronger. The media representatives began arriving around noon. I had positioned myself as the unofficial media liaison, greeting each journalist and blogger personally. I made sure to mention how excited we were to showcase our company's commitment to transparency and employee welfare. Several of them commented on how well organized the event was, how refreshing it was to see a company that truly seemed to care about its people, if they only knew. At 2:00 p.m., Lisa took the stage to introduce the afternoon's program. She was radiant, clearly thrilled with the media turnout and the professional quality of the event. As she spoke about Meridian Financial's values and commitment to excellence, I made my final checks on the technical systems. Everything was ready. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lisa announced, "please welcome our CEO, Marcus Thornfield." The crowd applauded as Thornfield approached the podium. He looked confident, presidential even, in his perfectly tailored suit. The cameras were rolling, both for the internal broadcast and for the news stations. I positioned myself at the technical control station, where Tom was monitoring the various video feeds. "Tom," I said quietly, "I'm going to handle the presentation slides for the CEO's speech. You focus on the camera work." He nodded, trusting me completely. After all, I was just the marketing director helping to make sure everything ran smoothly. Thornfield began his speech exactly as we had rehearsed. He talked about the company's growth, about the importance of family, about the trust between leadership and employees. His words were smooth, practiced, but I could see the arrogance underneath. He truly believed he was untouchable. "At Meridian Financial," he said, looking directly into the main camera, "we believe in complete transparency in all our financial dealings. We understand that our employees place their trust in leadership to manage their future security, and we don't take that responsibility lightly." That was my cue. I had programmed the system to recognize specific phrases from his speech, and those words triggered the first part of my revenge. The large screen behind Thornfield, which had been displaying the company logo, suddenly flickered. To most of the audience, it looked like a minor technical glitch. But to me, it was the beginning of the end. The screen went black for exactly 3 seconds, then began displaying what appeared to be a slideshow of financial documents. At first, people in the audience looked confused. Thornfield, unaware of what was happening behind him, continued speaking. But the journalists had noticed immediately, and I saw cameras turning toward the screen. The first slide showed a bank statement from one of Thornfield's offshore accounts, with a balance of $2.3 million. The header clearly identified it as funds transferred from the Meridian Financial Employee Pension Fund. A murmur went through the crowd as people began to understand what they were seeing. Thornfield finally noticed something was wrong when he saw the expressions on people's faces. He turned around and went pale when he saw his own financial crimes displayed on a screen 15 feet tall. For a moment, he was frozen, his mouth open but no words coming out. "Technical difficulties," he finally managed to say, his voice cracking. "Ladies and gentlemen, we seem to be having some technical difficulties." But the slideshow continued. The second slide showed email exchanges between Thornfield and his personal financial advisor, discussing the best ways to hide the stolen money. The third slide was a detailed timeline of transfers, showing exactly how much had been taken from the pension fund and when. The fourth slide was a calculation showing that if the stolen funds had remained in the pension account, each employee would have received approximately $15,000 more in their retirement benefits. The crowd was no longer murmuring. Some people were gasping, others were beginning to shout. I saw Jenny in the audience, her face a mixture of shock and fury as she realized what had been done to her family's future. Security guards were rushing toward the stage, but I had anticipated this. The beauty of my system was that it couldn't be shut down from the stage. The presentation was running from my backup server, and I had made sure it would continue even if someone tried to cut power to the main display. As security guards fumbled with cables and switches, the slideshow kept playing, revealing document after document of Thornfield's financial crimes. The news cameras were capturing everything. This wasn't just a corporate scandal anymore. It was a live, public exposure of criminal activity. I could see the journalists frantically making phone calls, probably to their editors, telling them to clear the front page for tomorrow's edition. Thornfield had abandoned any pretense of maintaining control. He was shouting at the security guards to turn off that damn screen. But his voice was being broadcast through the sound system to everyone in the park. The man who had always prided himself on his composure was completely unraveling in front of hundreds of people and multiple cameras. "This is obviously some kind of hack," he said, grabbing the microphone. "These documents are fabricated. This is clearly an attack on our company by competitors who want to damage our reputation." But the slideshow had moved to its final phase, the part I was most proud of. The screen now showed a side-by-side comparison of Thornfield's public statements about the company's financial health versus the actual financial records. Every lie, every misdirection, every false promise was laid bare for everyone to see. The crowd was becoming increasingly angry. These weren't just abstract financial crimes. They were personal attacks on every employee's future. People were shouting questions at Thornfield. "Where's my pension money? How could you do this to us? How long has this been going on?" I watched from my position at the technical station as chaos erupted around the stage. Security guards were trying to restore order, but it was too late. The damage was done. The truth was out, broadcast live to hundreds of people and recorded by multiple news organizations. That's when I saw Detective Rodriguez approaching the stage. I had anonymously contacted the police fraud division the night before, providing them with copies of all the evidence and telling them exactly when and where they could find Thornfield. The timing was perfect. They were arriving just as the evidence was being displayed publicly, making it impossible for anyone to claim the documents were fake or planted. Marcus Thornfield, Detective Rodriguez announced, her voice carrying over the chaos. You're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and violation of fiduciary duty. The crowd went silent as they watched their CEO being handcuffed on stage. The man who had seemed so powerful, so untouchable, was now just another criminal being led away by police. The cameras captured every moment, and I knew this footage would be playing on news stations for days. As the police car drove away with Thornfield in the back seat, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. There was satisfaction, certainly, but also a profound sadness for what this meant for the company and its employees. Many good people were going to lose their jobs as a result of Thornfield's crimes, and the pension fund would take years to recover, if it ever did. But there was also a sense of justice. The truth had been exposed, and the man responsible for so much suffering was finally being held accountable. The journalists were already working on their stories, and I knew that by evening, the scandal would be national news. In the days that followed, the investigation expanded rapidly. The FBI took over the case, discovering that Thornfield's crimes were even more extensive than my initial evidence had revealed. He had been embezzling funds for over 5 years, stealing a total of $8.7 million from the pension fund. The money had been used to finance a lavish lifestyle that included multiple vacation homes, expensive cars, and even a yacht. The board of directors, many of whom claimed they had no knowledge of Thornfield's activities, were subjected to intense scrutiny. 3 of them were eventually charged as accomplices, and the entire executive team was replaced. The company's stock price plummeted, and there were serious discussions about bankruptcy. But something unexpected happened in the aftermath. The employees, united by their shared experience of betrayal, began working together to save the company. Jenny, who had been struggling financially due to the pension fund freeze, emerged as an unlikely leader, organizing workers to demand representation on the new board of directors. The company that emerged from the scandal was leaner, more transparent, and more accountable to its employees. As for me, I faced my own consequences. The method I had used to expose Thornfield was technically illegal, involving unauthorized access to computer systems and the manipulation of company equipment. I was fired, of course, and faced potential criminal charges. But the prosecutor, recognizing the public service aspect of my actions, offered me a plea deal that involved community service and a small fine. The media attention was overwhelming. I was portrayed as everything from a heroic whistleblower to a rogue employee who had taken justice into her own hands. The truth, as always, was somewhere in between. I had made a choice to expose corruption, and I had accepted the consequences of that choice. 6 months later, I was working as a freelance marketing consultant, helping small businesses develop their brand identity. The work was less lucrative than my corporate job, but it was also more meaningful. I was helping honest entrepreneurs build legitimate businesses rather than contributing to the machinery of corporate corruption. I still think about that day at the picnic sometimes. The look on Thornfield's face when he realized what was happening. The anger in the crowd when they understood how they had been betrayed. The satisfaction of seeing justice served, even if it came at a personal cost. Thornfield was eventually sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the pension fund. His assets were seized, including the yacht and vacation homes, and the money was returned to the employees he had stolen from. It wasn't enough to fully compensate everyone, but it was a start. The company survived, barely, but it was fundamentally changed. The new leadership implemented strict oversight procedures and gave employees a voice in major decisions. The pension fund was restructured with independent oversight, ensuring that what happened under Thornfield could never happen again. I received a letter from Jenny about a year after the picnic. She had been promoted to department head and was working with the new management team to rebuild the company's culture. She thanked me for what I had done, but also acknowledged the complexity of the situation. "You saved our futures," she wrote, "but you also destroyed our present. I'm not sure whether to thank you or curse you." I understood her ambivalence. My actions had exposed the truth, but they had also caused pain and upheaval for many innocent people. The company picnic that was supposed to be a celebration of corporate unity had become the stage for corporate destruction. But sometimes destruction is necessary for reconstruction. The story became a case study in business schools, an example of both corporate corruption and the power of individual action. I was invited to speak at several conferences about corporate ethics and whistleblowing. Though I always emphasized that what I did was not a model to be emulated, there are proper channels for reporting fraud. And I had chosen to bypass them in favor of public spectacle. But I also couldn't deny the effectiveness of my approach. Traditional whistleblowing often results in the evidence being buried or the whistleblower being discredited. By making the revelation public and dramatic, I had ensured that the truth could not be suppressed or ignored. The live broadcast and media presence had created a permanent record that could not be disputed or covered up. 2 years after the picnic, I ran into Tom Bradley at a coffee shop downtown. He was working for a tech startup and seemed happy, though he admitted that he sometimes felt guilty about his unwitting role in the scandal. I assured him that he had done nothing wrong, that his technical expertise had simply been used in a way he never could have anticipated. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Everything you gave up to expose him?" I considered the question carefully. I had given up a lucrative career, my reputation in the corporate world, and my sense of security, but I had also given hundreds of people the truth about what had been done to them, and I had helped ensure that a criminal was held accountable for his crimes. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. I just wish it hadn't been necessary." The company picnic had been intended as a celebration of corporate success, a demonstration of the benevolent leadership that supposedly characterized Meridian Financial. Instead, it became a symbol of the corruption that can flourish when power is concentrated in the hands of individuals who believe they are above accountability. But it also became a symbol of the power of truth and the courage of individuals who are willing to risk everything to expose injustice. The barbecue smoke had long since dissipated, but the impact of that day continued to reverberate through the business community. A reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, is truly untouchable. In the end, my revenge had been complete. Marcus Thornfield, the man who had stolen from his employees while preaching about integrity, was in prison. The company he had corrupted was struggling to rebuild itself on a foundation of honesty and accountability. And I, the marketing director who had stumbled upon evidence of his crimes, had found a new purpose in helping honest businesses succeed. The company picnic that was supposed to showcase corporate unity had instead exposed corporate corruption. The CEO who had planned to use the event to enhance his reputation had instead seen it become the scene of his downfall. And the woman who had organized the perfect revenge had learned that justice, like revenge, is a dish best served cold, but with consequences that last far longer than the satisfaction of the moment. As I walked away from that coffee shop, I realized that my story had become part of the larger narrative about corporate responsibility and individual courage. The picnic had been just one day, but its impact would continue to influence how businesses operate and how employees respond to corruption for years to come. That, more than any personal satisfaction, was the true measure of my revenge.